Hi, crew. Um, Welcome to week 10 of public speaking. So this is my second time recording this. So I found out a third of the way in. A lot of my pictures on this PowerPoint are not loading, and I do not know why. And it's very upsetting because this is one where I'm like, I need these examples. So I think I've kind of problem solved it. It's gonna look a little wonky. It's gonna kind of be but just work with me. We'll get there. But so last week we talked about persuasive strategies. We talked about the ethos, pathos, logos, and we talked very briefly about it, just kind of got a foundation of it because again, your pitch speech is a persuasive speech, so I think those elements are important to think about, but we are really going to dive deeper into that when it comes to our last persuasive speech for this class. Then we also talked about common mistakes as well as tips having to do with Monroe's motivated sequence. And then last Wednesday, we had our pitch speech workshop, which after working with y'all on that day, giving y'all some time, I feel a lot more confident about where we're at and really got to answer some of y'all's questions. So I feel like we're all on the same page of what we're looking for, what I'm asking. So I'm very, very excited to see these speeches on Wednesday, and I think y'all are going to kill it. But so let's get into our day. So today we're going to talk about visual aids, specifically design principles having to do with slideshows, PowerPoints, and these can also 100% go along with trifolds. Then I'll go over some pitch speech reminders because my last class, or my Friday public speaking class, they did their speeches last week. So I kind of got to see some things that they did, and I wanted to pass on some information so you don't make the same mistakes. And then we're going to review and then go over assignments. So let's get into it. So visual aids, specifically design principles. So when creating a PowerPoint, a slideshow, trifold, whatever it is, there's a lot of conflicting information out there of what is the quote unquote best. But what we do know and what research has shown us is that our audience listen, will either listen to you or they're going to read the slides, but they cannot do both. So, this is why we are going to go over these aspects because this leaves you as the speaker with a lot of power to either direct your audience attention or scatter their attention, right? And we want to make sure we're directing them to exactly the main points, the message that you are talking about. So, let's get into how we can align our visual aids to effectively portray our message to our audience. So first, I want you to think about design with your audience in mind. So a slideshow is not your handout, not a handout, and not your outline. So I want you to keep it short, sweet, and concise. If you have a lot of information, make sure you say it out loud or have a completely separate handout with the information. And every image and even their placement should have the message, the medium, and the audience in mind. So I want you to think about, okay, is this aligning with my topic I'm talking about? Is this aligning with the medium I'm using? So a trifold or the slideshow. And how can I direct my audience using this image, these fonts, these colors, etc. So you have to think about all this when designing it. So let's see. See, it wasn't here either. Hopefully y'all can see this, but sometimes Zoom gets a little wonky and it doesn't like showing it. I hope you guys can see this. If not, I apologize. But so for your slideshow, you want to provide the right amount of information. Think Goldilocks, right? Not too cold, not too hot, just right. So having too much information on your slideshow, similar to this, if you can see it, puts a burden on the audience's ability to process the message. So because there's too much information, it really disallows your audience to fully grasp what it is you're talking about. It's almost like information overload right here. So then an example of it being too little would be if, right, if you can see this, the types of bicycles you just have road bikes, mountain bikes, cyclocross bikes, track bikes, recumbent bikes. And that's all you have on your slide, right? This is too little information and it makes your audience struggle to kind of put the pieces together of what exactly your message is and what you want them to get out of it. So we want to think not too much, not too little, just the right amount of information. So the next aspect of design principles is keeping it simple. So I want you to think only one concept or idea per slide. So you're not cramming a bunch of ideas into one slide. I want you to make sure the number of slides also corresponds with the time allotted for your speech. And then next is the goal of having your visual aid is have a slide that can be understood in 3 seconds. So it's not taking us 10 seconds to read over like that last slide, right? There's all this information. That would take us way more than 3 seconds to fully grasp what was on it. So this, I think, is a great goal to have in mind when making your visual aid. I want you to think of it as this billboard that you're passing on the highway. So you want to reduce the amount of irrelevant information that would distract your audience or the person driving on the highway so they get the message in 3 seconds. So this, think about eliminating any background images, using clear icons or images. So like, when like there's pictures that have like kind of white on the outside, trying to find ones that like don't have that. And then creating simplified graphs as well. So keeping it simple. Next, I want to talk about the slide layout, which will go very deep in it. We'll kind of touch on this for a little bit, but first, I want you to avoid just typing out the bullet points on your outline. Then I want you to consider how you can turn your words and concepts into images. And lastly, I want you to avoid overcrowding. We kind of touched on it, but let's kind of look at this. So when it comes to avoiding just typing out the bullet points on your outline, oh my gosh, this is a great example. This has literally everything, and it is out the wazoo way too much. So let's think of how can I make this information of prioritization framework into an image that can talk for me. Boom. I have a message or an image that can portray the message where, see, I can talk and I can go over this information in my speech while my audience just has this to look at, and it kind of helps break down what I'm trying to say in a simple fashion. And then lastly, again, my image is not working. I don't love that, but this would also be a great example of avoiding overcrowding. Like, look at this. This is just, there's not any white space. We don't know where to look exactly. Like, I guess the first thing we see is this up here because it is bolded. And then we kind of go to the numbers, but there's no bolding here. It's hard to know where the focal point is. So that overcrowding kind of leaves leaves the audience very confused and overwhelmed. So going off of that is we want to think about leaving white space. So white space is literally, think of in this slide, just this on the outside, right? There's nothing there. It's kind of a gap, it's a space. We use this to draw attention to our focal point, and it makes our slides, our visuals, our trifold way more aesthetically pleasing as well, right? Like think about when you're making a slideshow, especially on Canva, you can kind of see like, okay, how far is this and this? Are they even? Where's the middle? And let me make sure this aligns. So I'm thinking a lot about that, right? Not too close to the sides, not taking up the whole space because I want that white space. There's something really aesthetically pleasing about it. And again, it shows like, okay, the focal point is it over here, isn't here. It's bringing us, it's almost like these arrows that are pointing inside to like, this is the focal point. This is what I want us to look at. So that's why that is so important. Next, I want us to think about using contrast to highlight your message. So contrast should not be subtle. And if things are not the same, then make them very, very different. So let me show you what this should look like. I had a problem with this. Yep, there we go. It's not working. Okay, let's see. Oh, boom. Okay, I can do it here. So a low contrast image would be like this, right? It's black and white. Nothing really pops at you. It's just like alert, voice, paint, unresponsive. So we're not really getting things to remember, right? Because it's like these are capitalized, but it's not making it any different from the whole word itself. Where a high contrast image, look at this. We have that AVPU. So alert, voice, pain, unresponsive. So we want the audience to remember these first letters or this acronym to take with them. And so we're making it super different from the words itself. So low contrast, it all blends in together. It's capitalized, it's not bolded, so we're not really sure what we're taking away. For this, we want to make sure the audience takes away this acronym, so we are making it very different from the rest of our letters. Beautiful, amazing. Let's see if I can. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so next, when it comes to your slide layout, there is this thing called the rule of thirds. So this is just if you divide the screen into two imaginary lines horizontally and then two vertically, you end up with 9 sections, so 9 little squares. So the most visually interesting and pleasing portions of the screen will be at the points where the lines intersect. And knowing this can help you direct your audience's attention to the most important sections. So let's look at that. Oh my gosh. Are all my photos? That's crazy. Anyways, well, let's do it again. Okay, so this is what just a regular slide, not thinking about the rule of thirds would look. Just centered. Boom. And you know, it's not bad. It's not horrible. But let's see when we do the rule of thirds. So see, look, at every intersection, which is kind of the most interesting aspects, we're putting the words, this big word, and then we're putting her at the intersection, right? So every one of our audience members is going to bring our eyes to each one of these sections the most. So that is where I'm putting my important information. Here, there's not really a focal point we're looking at, right? Well, kind of honestly, she's the focal point. But the thing is, we have this quote up here, so it's kind of not clear exactly where we want us to look. So just use what we know about our audience is that they're gonna look in this square right here. And how can we place stuff from that? So that is the rule of thirds. So next is the Z pattern. So this just says that, so basically in English speaking countries, we tend to read images and slides left to right in a Z pattern, just because like how we read. So viewers are constantly scanning from focal point to focal point. So you need to create visual cues to kind of direct them to this relevant information. Oh, now we have an image. So look at the Z, right? So it's like we'll naturally kind of look up here, kind of scan down, down again, and down, right? We're going right, left, right, kind of how we read. So if we kind of have a focal point that has this same Z pattern, we're kind of working along with what our audience already, what we know about our audience and how they read and how they look at an image. And we're making sure the most important aspects are in their focal point. So next to think about is having your objects face your main points. So if you have people or animals in a slide, you want to make sure that your attention is to the important information on the slide and not have them looking away. So, for example, an audience will kind of direct their attention to whatever the objects are directing their attention to. So let's see, look, why one and not the other? Anyways, so in this example, right, our object is looking down. So we're going to look at her book too. But this is what I want my audience to look at. So a better way to do this would have her looking up at this information. And that would kind of tell the audience and move the audience to this, which is what we want our focal point to be. This image was just an example of that, but next is background and effects. So some advice for this is we want to use solid colors if words are being put on top. So for example, these, right? So we have these images, so it kind of blends in and it's hard to see. Same thing with having the scissors on top. It's like, what is going on? Um, and then alongside that is if you're having a slideshow, make sure the same color background is throughout, right? If I go here and I go there, my background is exactly the same. So it's not distracting and it makes it seem like this is a cohesive presentation. So that's on backgrounds and effects. So next, let's talk about some colors. So color definitely has this huge impact on the ability to see and understand the visuals itself. So a big thing is that different colors portray different meanings. So for example, you might want to avoid the color red because it reduces the ability to think clearly. You might want to avoid bright colors like yellow, pink, and orange, LOL, because it can be too distracting because our eyeballs are going to go straight there. And a good color to use, right, is black because it has this symbol of sophistication. So that's kind of things you want to think about when it comes to colors, like their meanings and how people feel when they see them. So that is different ways to think about colors and how we feel. And much of what we perceive in terms of color is based on what color is actually next to it. So we want to make sure we are using colors that contrast, right? We want to do that because it improves visibility as well as we can see it more from a distance, especially that's important when it comes to this job fair, career fair type of speech we're doing. So for this, we just had the color wheel. Not them all going away. Anyways, hold up. Let's see if we can pull it up on these screenshots. Hopefully you can see this, but I'm looking at complementary colors and then an analogous. Oh my gosh, sorry, my color theory people. Colors. Basically, colors that are on opposite sides of the color wheel and then colors that are right next to it. So that's kind of like what we like to see. So we like to see either one of those. So either, for example, right, purple and yellow, they're across from each other on the color wheel. And so they're like these immediate contrasting colors. And it's for some reason it's very satisfying and aesthetically pleasing to us. So we really, really like that. As well as we kind of like colors that are next to each other on the wheel. They kind of complement each other. So thinking about how to use those to your benefit, as well as hopefully you can see this. Please move the window away from it. I don't know if y'all can see this, but talking about warm and cool colors. So this image kind of shows, actually, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna post these pictures on D2L. So if y'all are like, I did not see a single thing that she posted, they will be on D2L as an example. So you can kind of see what not to do, look at the colors and kind of what I was talking about, and you can follow along as we go. So, um, talking about like warm colors, what different colors look like on top of different backgrounds. Tints are lighter, shades are darker. So I just want you to think about how these different colors work together and what is kind of harsh on the eyes and what's something that really makes things pop and have your audience draw their eye to. Amazing show stopping. So those are colors. Oh, another thing to think about with colors is avoiding using red and green together. This is because this is like the most prominent like form of color blindness where people can't distinguish between red and green. So maybe kind of avoiding those colors and bringing them together is a very important thing to kind of think about for sure. Next, let's think about fonts. So the thing is, first thing is readability is the top concern. So if you are using a font that is just harsh on the eyeballs, you might want to reconsider, right? The whole point is that your audience can see. Oh gosh, I don't know if y'all can see this. Anyways, I pulled up a bad font effects. If you need to go on D2L, open it up. But it just shows all these fonts that are just actually horrendous. Like using all uppercase, using like if it was like I decree, like type of font, having things all bolded, using something in all small caps, outline, shadows, word art stretched. Um, just very honestly ugly, very, very ugly fonts. But again, always think about readability. That is your top concern. Next is thinking about the text itself. So if you have too many words on your slide, you don't have a visual aid, you have a teleprompter. And I want you to think about that, especially because a lot of times when we put a lot of words on our visual aid, we tend to just read off of it. Like we just use it as this crutch, and then it affects our delivery, and then that affects how effective our message is and how credible we seem to our audience. So, avoiding that. So, remember that your audience, they can't read and listen at the same time. We already talked about this, but so really limiting the amount of words on your slide is so important. I want you to kind of consider how much reading your audience is doing versus listening. So when you're making your slideshow, I want you to think, okay, how much time is my audience going to be reading versus listening to me? And if it's way more or even half, definitely take some text out. Next is turn any concepts into possible images. We talked about that. Picture says, or picture's worth 1,000 words. Um, how can I make this basically stuff for my outline? into an image. And lastly is reserve the bullet point list for any specifications or explaining the order of processes. So really choose when to use those bullet points when it's really like you want to be specific. For example, in like doing this lecture, I want y'all to take away like specifics from this. I want you to be taking notes. So that's why I use a lot of bullet points. Even also if I was explaining the order of a process, so step 1, step 2, step 3, having bullet points would be very helpful. So that's what I want you to think with text. Just that Goldilocks again, not too much, not too little, just right. Next is images. So choose only images that enhance your spoken words and are professional quality. So using images that are super pixelated. This image is an image with like a watermark on it that says like stock photo. So that is super distracting. We don't need our audience to be like, oh, that's a stock photo, right? That's what you're avoiding. You're avoiding leading your audience to a rabbit hole in their brain where they stop paying attention to your message. So these are things, professional quality images is what you want to think about. Next is graphs and charts. So this is just, if you have any numerical data, you want to use a graph or a chart to kind of present this information. You want to think about making sure that the point or the conclusion you're trying to make, or you want your audience to make, is very clear, right? So in this, we want to reduce the amount of data on each slide. We want a simple and clear conclusion. We don't want too much information. We want it to be our audience sees our data and immediately is like, oh, I understand the point they're making, right? There's a lot of like women more than men at this university. There's more cats than dogs that are on the streets, right? We want to make sure our audience gets the point very quickly when it comes to our graphs and charts. But if there's too much like colors and numbers and data and all the data kind of blends together, we really don't we're not leading our audience to really understand our point. Here I just had different like a complex chart, a simple chart, and a regular chart. And I will post those on D2L so you can kind of see those. So the first kind of example would be using a line graph. So a line graph would be good to kind of show trends over time or how like data relates to each other. Oh gosh, yeah, I don't think you're gonna see this. Did you see that? Look at that. Why does it show there and there? That's crazy. Anyways, so that's a line graph. Oh my gosh, is this how I'm gonna do the rest of my speech? That's crazy. Or the rest of my lecture? So the line graph shows trends over time, right? So like over time, whatever years these are, you see how the data has changed and how they relate to each other, where they overlap, which one's more than the other. So that would be good for a line graph. For a bar chart, it'd be super good, right? It's just the bars that go up. This is good for showing comparisons of size and magnitude. So, right, we see where one of the data, which the blue is male, the pink is female, um, what a difference in size there are, like the population grew, the college enrollment by gender. So you can kind of see the magnitude of each one and how it differed from each other and the difference. And then lastly is a pie chart. We all kind of know what a pie chart looks like. The circle with the pieces out of it. basically shows the parts related to the whole. So if we're using, again, college enrollment by gender, and we had a pie chart, it would show, right, the whole is college enrollment by gender of a certain year, and then the different pie aspects would be female and male enrollment. So those are just different graphs and charts you might want to use. Well, there's no pictures moving on. I'm so sorry to everyone, but I will post some on D2L so you have some things to look back on when you're making your visual aid. And you can kind of see the examples. But I do apologize again. I had no idea. But so now that you kind of have this idea of how to use your slideshow more efficiently, make it more aesthetically pleasing, let's go over some pitch speech reminders and expectations. So first, I want us obviously to talk about visual aids. Obviously, think about it being aesthetically pleasing, limiting those words. When it comes to actually using it on the day, when it comes to clicking to the next slide, please don't make it distracting, right? I had a lot of people like they'd click to the next slide and they might click too early and they're like, oh, sorry, and things just weren't aligning. And it really took away from their message, right? And it made them look not very knowledgeable or credible. So just be aware of that when it comes to actually presenting it. Also, not having your body turn towards your visual while you talk. So I had a lot of people, they would be telling me the speech, and surprisingly, it's not like they had a bunch of words on their visual aid. Like it really was just pictures, but I think they were nervous. So instead of looking me in the eyes, they just kind of looked at their visual aid. And I want you to remember eye contact, that will get points off of delivery immediately. So be aware of that. Um, and I also want you to know, like, the world's your oyster. You can bring candy, cookies. One of my students had a raffle basket. You could bring a tablecloth, literally whatever you want. Think of like a job fair, a career fair. They have like all this different swag, like pens and stress balls and notepads. They have all this stuff that's super exciting. Actually, I have this downloaded on D2L, but I want to show y'all, but it will be here. So under week 10 online, go to visual aid example pitch speech. And here's an example from my other class. So this was Kelly's, and she was talking about this is like a dream of hers to like make this swim school that's like an all-in-one thing that like people in the Humble area that do swim competitions, like there is a whole place to do it. So this was like her business idea. But so she had these like rubber duckies that had a picture, like these were literally stickers of, and this is the logo and the name of her business, and it kind of had a little like message of like what it was, and it had a little lifesaver on it too. And then she had these things where if you were interested in investing or you knew someone that would be a good investor, you'd write their name or email. And then you check if you wanted emails or texts from them, important information. Then you would put them in this, which would put you into a raffle to win this basket, which is so creative and so interesting. But also looking at her trifold, right? She does have like words, and I think she did good at like putting like who she is and kind of a background. But then, right, simple words, the pictures are kind of talking for it. So look, 50-meter pool, learn to swim pool, the doggy pool, food and work tables, endless pool tanks, gym. Um, but she had all the different steps. My favorite thing she did was look, she did this missing piece. So she has like this is Kingwood, this is Humble, this is Atascocita. So it's like and this is where she would build her swim school. So like this is the missing piece, and she says that her business is the missing piece in the community, which is awesome. I thought she did a great job of that. But again, right? Candies, there was like a rubber ducky in there. There was like this is a toy for dogs. So she had a bunch of stuff in there. So just an example, but I just want to show you like the world's your oyster. I had students like bake cookies and they had a bunch of cookies. They also had like big things of coffee and then like syrups to put in the coffee. So just some ideas, just so you know. Next is so again, the setup is going to be career fair, job fair-esque. So this is everyone is going to be talking at one time, right? It's not going to be like our normal speeches where everyone sits, listens, and you just talk. This is going to be like people are basically in front of you, like standing right in front of you, and you are talking to them one on one. So it's a very different kind of aspect. And I think my last class even said like that, I don't know why, but they weren't expecting it to be that intimate. So I just want you to be aware of that's kind of the vibe we're going for. I will say, because I think, and I think the same with here, we'll only have 5 to 6 people talking at once. And sometimes like the talking gets off, so it ends up being one person sometimes talking. They had me put on like kind of coffee shop studying jazz in the background. So it kind of seemed like more full. Um, so and honestly, what the hell? Literally, if you want to invite your friends to listen and like when they're ready to go, they can go. Do it. So we have a bunch of people kind of listening, talking, they can support you, do whatever. I don't care. I'm open to it. Um, so yeah, setup is going to be that career fair, job fair. Just be aware it's going to be that intimate vibe. Next is having that strong concluding statement at the end. So on the outline template, right, I have action as the last one, and I think concluding statement before. Just play around with it. See what works best for you. And I think we talked about this during the workshop. Think about, right, you have your action. So you need to sign my petition or scan my QR code, or I need this amount of money from you. Then have a concluding statement after that kind of shows your audience like, okay, I'm done. So, sign my petition and make my dream a reality. Boom, concluding statement. Um, and then lastly, being very persuasive. Remember, you are the salesperson. Put on your salesperson pants. And I don't know, I just feel like sometimes we feel like persuading someone or selling someone something is kind of like slimy and kind of like icky. But like you really have to think. This is what I learned in my recruitment job I had for 4 months, which was horrendous. But what I did learn, because sometimes I'd feel like I'm trying to convince these people that have jobs to like let me give them a better job. So I had to basically convince them that their job wasn't all that. And like we would ask my boss, like, is that ethically okay? And he was like, if you believe in like you're helping them, like you're doing them a service, right? Then like you're just trying to make sure that they have the best possible um like job inter what am I trying to say? you're trying to make sure that they are in the best environment they can be. So like if you believe in your product, the petition you're signing, the organization, the club, whatever it is, you aren't making someone do something they don't want to do. Think about it more as like you're spreading the good news and sharing it with the world. You're like, you need to hear about this because this will make the world so much better, right? You really have to believe in what you're quote unquote selling. And this is kind of why I made y'all choose like a not real topic. So you could be like as over the top as you want, right? Using those emotional, logical, credible, like strategies, go over the top. Be like, without my product, you are gonna like you'll miss an assignment and then your grade will drop and then your GPA will drop and then you won't get into the college you want and then you won't blah blah blah, you won't get the job you want and then you'll be homeless and you won't have any money. Like literally go over the top. I do not care, but build those emotions, paint those pictures, really persuade us. That is what I'm looking for. So, those are just some pitch speech reminders. If y'all think of any other just like random questions that would clarify the day and bring you some peace, email me. I'll be happy to answer them. So what we did today, we went over visual aids, specifically design principles, and then we talked about pitch speech reminders. There's some articulation for you. And lastly for the day is looking at our assignments. So again, your pitch speech is on Wednesday, which is this upcoming Wednesday, November 13th. Remember, your outline is due before you speak. I cannot give you a grade if I don't have that. And then your out of class challenge, which is your pitch practice log, that is due same time, same day. In the meantime, you can get your out of class challenge. Your schedule a coaching session with me specifically for your pitch speech. Remember, if you've already done one with me, that's okay. You can do one for the demo. You could have done one for the info, pitch, and persuasive. So they're all separate challenges. So just email me a time, date that works best for you, and I'll send you a Zoom link and we can meet and work on our pitch speeches. So that's all I have for you. Remember, there's no quiz. Your biggest thing is just working on that pitch speech, outline, visual aid, and have those ready for me by Wednesday. I'm so excited to see them. Truly, these I think are the most fun in my opinion. But I'm excited to see them. Again, email me with any questions, comments, concerns. And I will see y'all on Wednesday. Bye.